Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Now, of course, I do have to remind everyone that this is a public session, so tonight it is just general information. We cannot give any financial advice, but obviously we have our experts on hand seated over there if you have any questions relating to your personal circumstances. And again, of course, we're always here to take your questions. Just get in touch with us. So, without further ado, I'm just going to kick off for our first speaker tonight, who is absolutely passionate about making your super work for you, and that's our chair, Linda Scott. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you so much, Ning Ning. It's so lovely to see you all, and thanks everybody for spending a little bit of time with us this evening. We're so grateful that you've come along to spend time with us. I too would like to begin by acknowledging the original owners of this land, the Muwinina people, and to pay my respect to their elders past and present, and acknowledge any other Australian and Tasmanian Aboriginal people and acknowledge their role as the custodians of this beautiful land. I would just, if you wouldn't mind, also just like to acknowledge, I just met Susan Buckland, who's one of the former trustees of the Heritage Funds. Can I just really call out and say thank you so much? It's such an honour to be here with all of our members, but also some of our former trustees who've contributed to the success of this extraordinary fund. So thanks, Susan. And also just thanks to the staff who've worked so hard to pull these sessions together. Can I just ask people if they might just quickly give people a round of applause to say thank you. I love Tasmania. I was here recently. I'm very lucky to have some family members here. We were up on the mountain. I, showing what a mainlander I am, got out with a beanie. Obviously my family all got out in shorts and laughed at me for being such a terrible mainlander. So I do apologise for the large jacket that I wear as a person from Sydney. But I do want to say that it is such an honour to chair this current iteration of the fund. I know many of you have been members for some time and members of former funds that have now rolled into CareSuper. I also want to thank and acknowledge, of course, the former and most recent chair for many of you, Maria Wilton, who continues to serve on our board and did such a magnificent job, and before her, Naomi, who was a long-term chair. In fact, I had dinner with Naomi last night. She says hello. She's very well. She's still very engaged in how the fund is going. But I do want to just acknowledge the incredible contribution of Heritage members and trustees and all the people, particularly those in Tasmania, who've built this incredibly successful fund. I hope that goes some way to showing you how proud you should be of the fund that Tasmania has built here. It has been and continues to be an incredible success story. Following the merger last year in November between CareSuper and Spirit Super, our award-winning member service headquarters remain here in Hobart. We're really proud of that, and that includes our primary contact centre, and it's the hub for all of our administrative services. It's a model, obviously, built right here in Tassie, and we're so proud to be the biggest fund in Tassie, and we have boots on the ground ready to assist you in person or over the phone. Someone said to me earlier this evening, and I won't point out who said it to me, that they were concerned when the fund went through another name change and went through another merger that we might lose some of the care and local feeling. I hope that we're working hard and you see that hard work to contribute to the fact that we still want to be the fund that is big enough to make a difference but small enough to care, small enough to be here and continue to make an impact in your lives for all of you. Needless to say, when you need to talk to somebody about your superannuation, you can be confident you'll be receiving support and advice and help and wisdom from somebody who is a local here. We also believe that CareSuper is truly different to other superannuation funds. What sets us apart, I think, is how easy we are to deal with, again, building on that incredible legacy. We do the basics brilliantly. not all organisations can say that. It's no secret that superannuation can be complex, but we do everything we can to make it simple and tailored to your needs. When you call us, you'll get through quickly and you'll speak to a member of our award-winning team. Something I'm particularly proud of is, in fact, last month, 90% of the calls we took from our members were resolved in the very first call. Your superannuation is, of course, one of the largest assets you will ever have, and so you need help with it. You deserve to get that help quickly and easily. On top of that, care and respect, of course, are so critical from real people based in your community. We are so proud to be a profit-to-member industry superannuation fund, and of course that means that every decision we make is in the best interests of you and your retirement. We don't pay shareholders and we don't make a profit. Your fees go directly to running the fund so that we can continue to provide you with quality products and the award-winning service that you deserve. And we also have an incredible, unique and very strongly performing investment strategy, and we're really pleased to have Suzanne here tonight to speak to you a little bit more about that and about what we're doing to deliver strong long-term returns. Something I know is on the forefront of many of your minds is the volatility we've experienced over the last few months, and it's a great opportunity if people have questions about that to ask them tonight. Late last year, we reached a significant milestone with this successful merger, as I mentioned, between Spirit Super and CareSuper. We pursued this merger for many reasons, but primarily because we do believe that it helps us to be stronger for our members. Our size allows us to strike that really important balance between being big enough to make a significant impact and still small enough to provide personalised care, ensuring that you all can come first. Our member-first culture centres around service and experience. It's also about advocating on your behalf to ensure that you have a strong and fair system that your superannuation is in. Some of you may not know, but Australia's superannuation is now very large. It is now the fourth largest pool of pension assets internationally. We're also the fastest growing in the world, expected to rise to second in the world by just 2031. So that's a remarkable achievement for a country of just 26 million people. Our system is really the envy of the world, and that comes with responsibility for long-term equity and sustainability. We're working alongside a number of our peak industry bodies on all of your behalf on priorities that we believe will directly benefit all of you. We're so encouraged to see super guarantee contributions. So for those of you still working, these are the contributions from your employer that go into your accounts. We will increase next month up to 12%. We support payday super reforms, which aim to address the issue of unpaid superannuation that affects more than 2.8 million Australians. These reforms help align superannuation contributions with an employee's payday instead of being, in some cases, paid quarterly. And so for those of you that haven't logged in for a while, or for those of you that have family members that haven't logged in for a while, logging in, particularly next month, is really critical for working people to check that those instalments, those super contributions, have indeed gone up to 12%. We're also passionate about reforms to help millions of Australians access help, guidance and affordable education and financial advice so that everybody can feel confident about their own retirement. As I touched on earlier, we break down the complexities of superannuation and provide you with clear, personalised advice from a super expert as part of your membership. Just recently, we helped a member nearing retirement visit us for the first time in our Hobart office. He was very lucky to have a lump sum of money outside of his superannuation and was thrilled to learn after speaking to one of our super advisors, that he could indeed contribute that sum into his superannuation and claim a portion as a tax deduction. It obviously helped him feel much more confident about his retirement plans, and it started with a simple phone call from through the call centre, who then referred him on to our advice team. A great example of service and teamwork on our end, but most importantly, a terrific outcome for this member of ours who was able to receive this personalised and practical advice at no additional cost to him. As our superannuation system matures, we're seeing more people improving their own financial wellbeing and fewer Australians solely relying on the age pension. The number of Australians reliant on the full age pension is declining. It's projected to halve, actually, over the next 40 years, from 44% today to 21% in 2062. It's why it's so important that you and your families are getting exactly what you need from your super fund at all stages of your life. Keeping your superannuation invested rather than withdrawing it early gives you the best chance to have your superannuation grow over time, just as the system was designed to do, helping support your confident retirement for the future. You're here today, which means you're already pretty engaged with your superannuation and your financial future. So well done, thank you, and it's so fantastic. It's also important for those of you who are interested in others to ensure that the next generation, your children, grandchildren, friends and relatives, are also engaged with their superannuation too. My two sons are in high school. My eldest son in Year 9 came home very excitedly the other day and said, "Oh, we've just started learning about commerce about superannuation." He was delighted. I was quite annoyed that it's taken him until Year 9 to learn about superannuation. Obviously, he gets a bit of it at home, but you can never have enough. But it's so important to help even young people just understand, the benefits of compound interest, of how much superannuation can make a difference to your life. So please, take advantage of all the member services and support options available to you, and tell your friends and your family and your loved ones. We have plenty. Maybe even start, if you haven't already, with a super health check from one of our super experts. If you haven't done one today, please do reach out and speak to the team. Through your membership, you and your family can access expert online health services through MetLife 360 at no extra cost to you. Physiotherapists, dietitians, a range of health practitioners. Despite my enthusiasm, and maybe even your own, I understand, though, that superannuation isn't always the most exciting topic, especially for young people, when retirement can feel like such a long time away. So I wanted to share a couple of simple ways that you can help your loved ones care about their superannuation too. The first one is, have them and yourself, please do go and check out the CareSuper website. There's lots of resources available, calculators, projection tools and financial education content. You can try our retirement lifestyle calculator online to check you're on the right track and help your loved ones do the same. The second is to check your insurance cover to make sure it suits you and your family. We have a range of affordable options available to our members. The third, if you haven't already, is to download our app, and in particular, check your beneficiaries so that you can have peace of mind that your superannuation will go where you want it to if you sadly pass away. And most importantly, please do seek advice. As I spoke about before, expert advice is available to you at no extra cost and can make actually a really enormous difference to you and your future. As has been mentioned by Ning, you'll notice the handy magnets and leaflets around the room tonight with some other really simple tips to ensure you're ready for your retirement. And if you've already checked all those boxes, thank you in advance for having that conversation with your family and friends too. I'm so incredibly humble and grateful to be the chair of this incredible fund. We're so proud of the legacy we're building at CareSuper based on this incredible Tasmanian story where you, our members, come first. We're more committed than ever to being Australia's most trusted retirement partner in retirement confidence. Thank you again so much for being here tonight, and thank you so much for allowing us to care for you and your superannuation. Thanks.
Welcome everybody, it's lovely to see you here tonight, and we are obviously competing with quite the show across the road, but it's lovely to have you here and be able to engage with you and hopefully help you engage with your super and your super fund. CareSuper, as we know it today, is obviously a fund that brings together some proud histories, actually multiple proud histories of caring, and I guess that's the beautiful thing about all the mergers that have made CareSuper that it is today. It's always been a very member-focused and outcomes-focused organisation. And so caring is now officially in the name, which is a beautiful way to get to where we are and where we've got to, and it's everything that we stand for and everything we want to do. It's important, and I know, Linda talked about it and touched on it, but we do remain deeply connected to Tasmania, and it's something that's very, very important to us. We do think of ourselves as a Tasmanian success story, and it's something that we're very, very proud of, and we hope that you are too. Tassie is at the heart of our operations. It is the engine room of our fund, and it delivers many of the services and certainly a lot of the interactions that you would have as a member delivered from Tasmania. We have an industry-leading, and something we're really, really proud of, but an industry-leading and award-winning contact centre, which is just up the road at 188 Collins. And we also have obviously super advice teams right across the country. So that's there for you, and we would encourage you to access those teams. They're able to help you, and we would love to be able to help you connect with your super. And so while our name may have changed, and I know it's changed a few times, certainly from RBF days, it's changed a few times for various members who've been with our fund on this journey with us, we do remain very much the same fund with the same spirit, the same belief, and that is all about you, your super, and we remain committed to Tasmania, to its workers, to its employers, and obviously to the communities as well. At CareSuper, we do pride ourselves on our connection with our members, and tonight is actually all about that. And one way that we do it internally at CareSuper is to tell members stories. You've already heard one from Linda tonight, but we do tell members stories at events internally in the organisation, including at board meetings. We talk about it at events where we bring together our people. And tonight I'd just like to extend that a little bit further and bring you in on a member story. This story is, unfortunately, an incredibly sad story, and I've told it a few times, and I am getting a bit braver about saying it, but the first time was very difficult. It's difficult, but it is important. And it's a story about a CareSuper member who actually was a Spirit Super member previously and came across with the merger. And they were diagnosed with cancer. And this member reached out to our super advice team, and they were supported with her claim through her terminal illness. This didn't cost the member anything, as has been touched on. It's part of the service that is offered to all members for free. And obviously it was wonderful that that member took it up, because what happened from that is the super advisor that was engaging with that member identified that the member's death benefit was going to be taxed because she had a high taxable component, and she also had adult non-dependent children, and they were her beneficiaries that had been named. That member was then referred to our comprehensive advice team, who were able to help come up with a better plan for that member's superannuation. And ultimately, through our expert financial planner, they were able to provide the member with advice that enabled the super death benefit to be tax-free for her children. This obviously was able to be implemented immediately, which was really, really important, particularly in this circumstance. And it hopefully provided that member with some reassurance in a very, very difficult time. Unfortunately, not long after receiving that advice, the member did pass away, but thankfully the advice had been implemented before her passing, and ultimately her children benefited, and it was in the vicinity of $40,000 more as a consequence that they received as part of that than they would have otherwise received. Now, as a father of two kids, it's easy to reflect on these sorts of incidents and think about how I would want it to be if I was in that circumstance. And I think in some small way, I do feel some comfort that member in that moment got something that may have given her a little bit of comfort in a very, very difficult time. As you can see, sorry, it's a heck of a story. As you can see from that story, supporting our members, well, hopefully you can see from that story, but supporting our members through the good times and the bad is something that's incredibly important, and it's a really big part of our job, and we take it incredibly seriously. And when you call us, and I guess I was alluding to this earlier, when you call us, you speak to a CareSuper employee. And I'm sure you're all thinking that's obvious, but in this industry, it's not so obvious. It is actually much rarer than you might think. So our contact centre and our operations team are all CareSuper employees, many of them, as I alluded to earlier, based right here in Hobart. And when you have an insurance claim, if you have an insurance claim, you get case managed end-to-end by the same person. Another part of our proposition which we think is incredibly important, because as you can imagine in some of the cases that our team deal with, you certainly don't want to have to be talking to multiple people about the circumstances that you're going through. So that is just part of how the team down here do it, and that is part of the incredible importance of that in-house administration model that we have, and frankly, of our people. So we take great pride in that. And 6 months after the merger, I did mention the award winning earlier, but 6 months post-merger, we have just been recently re-ranked the -- 1 for customer experience across the entire superannuation industry. Something that Spirit Super had held for a very long time, but the consequences of the merger did knock us off our perch, I'm happy to admit. We slipped to 3rd place briefly for 1 quarter, but we're back to #1. And not just #1 in the superannuation industry, we're actually #1 in all of financial services. Again, maybe not the highest bar to get ourselves over, but we judge ourselves on the experience that you have with us. So as a fund, we always want to be helping our members. We want them to help understand their finances. We want to have the right advice and education, and something that's really important to us is to make that easy as possible. And so over the last 6 months, as perhaps an example of that, we've delivered over 60 webinars that have been attended by over 3,000 members, and we've hosted in-person education events around the country, and obviously in this wonderful state as well. We've had significant uplift of resources on our website following the merger, and that's something that we will continue to build on to find the right things that help you engage with your super and understand your super. But there's lots of calculators, projection tools and financial education content that is available on there, and would encourage you to have a look. Our connection to our members also extends to supporting through times of uncertainty, and there's certainly been plenty of that in the world recently. And so you will have noticed that we've been in the news as an industry, superannuation. The market volatility triggered by the US government-imposed tariffs has had superannuation on the front pages of newspapers over the last couple of months. But there's also been significant news, which you may or may not have seen, about cybersecurity consequences or events that were experienced by super funds around the country. Our Chief Investment Officer, Suzanne Branson, is here. She will speak shortly, obviously, and touch on the investment strategy that looks after your retirement savings, and talks about how it will, its whole strategy is built around smoothing the impacts of those market movements, but still ensuring long-term strong returns, which are incredibly important. I will, however, so I'll leave the market volatility pieces to Suzanne. She's got lots of great slides and content to cover on that. But I will talk about the cybersecurity issues that have been very, very topical, and I suspect will remain a very significant and growing concern for all Australians. Firstly, let me quickly just reassure you that keeping your personal information and your retirement savings safe is obviously an incredibly important ambition of ours and a priority of ours. And also, let me reassure you that we were not impacted, and your accounts were not impacted by the cyber security events that were in the news recently. But these threats are evolving, and these scams are more sophisticated, and often we are facing up against state-based organisations. These are not just errant teenagers in basements, as they may have been once. These are very sophisticated operations on a massive magnitude, and they've obviously identified superannuation as Linda was talking earlier about the scale of the industry. It's becoming a target globally. So alongside measures that you might experience, such as verification codes and multi-factor authentication, all of the friction that we have put in at the front of our experiences with you, which I understand isn't always the most fun thing, but it's an incredibly important thing. We have a comprehensive set of strategies in the fund to tackle cybercrime and keep your superannuation savings as safe as possible. So we have a specialised financial crime team, we have a cyber security team in-house, and they're always on the lookout for those threats and ready to respond 24/7. We also have partners in the industry that are leading cybersecurity organisations to further add and support and augment our capacity internally, both should we be attacked, but also to prevent attacks. We conduct regular tests looking for vulnerabilities. We also publish lots of member notifications and articles and education, and you will continue to see more of that to help you understand those evolving threats, so that you too can stay vigilant, because this is one of those moments that we do need to work together to best defend it. We engage with the government intelligence agencies on this topic as well, and stay very connected to them and informed, because they often know lots more than we do about where these threats are coming from and when they are coming. So I've spoken about what we do, and I've also hinted at there is things that you can do to help work together and keep your money safe. And so some of the things, and I know these things may sound pretty obvious, but it is really, really important, because the vulnerabilities that are created, these are often the things that prevent them. So adopting strong, unique passwords and staying vigilant to phishing attacks is incredibly important. And if you haven't changed your password, or if it's not a little bit sophisticated, or if you've got the same password in lots of different places, I'd encourage you tonight to deal with that and address that, because the recent phishing attack that was going on, that superannuation was engaged in, was actually because of this very issue. Know that CareSuper, and I think this is a tip that hopefully you can lock in your mind, but we will never request your member online passwords or login information. We will never ring you, we'll never email you or send you text messages or engage with you on social media asking for those sorts of credentials. So if somebody it's not us. And if you do have we do ring our members. So if you are uncertain though that is this really a CareSuper person, then please hang up, ring the contact centre back, and we'll be able to verify that it was or wasn't. I'd encourage everybody to keep their antivirus software up to date on all of your devices, phones, laptops, iPads, etc. It's incredibly important wherever you might be engaging with financial services information or any of your personal information to have antivirus software installed and used. And don't open attachments and click on links from unknown sources, and that's getting harder and harder to tell what is an unknown source. But importantly, should you experience any sort of loss of data or any sort of concern that you might have had been compromised, please contact us as soon as possible. Sometimes members will go and tell their banks and forget to tell their super fund, and it's incredibly important that you do tell us because there are things that we can do immediately to help create additional security for your savings. So please remember us, please engage us, and please work with us, and we'll do our very best as well to ensure that we're educating you and guiding you and also protecting you from these threats. Before I wrap, if there's any questions about your super, please reach out to us, please engage. Hopefully tonight is an example of us opening those doors and encouraging you to walk in and engage and talk to us about what's important to you. The more you can tell us, the more we can continue to build this fund to be one that represents you and delivers for you. So thank you for being part of CareSuper's journey and for having the confidence in us to look after, of course, what is one of your most, if not your most important assets, and that is your retirement savings. So thank you for all coming.
Good evening, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time. I do have quite a bit of material that I'm going to talk you through tonight. Bear with me, we're going to cover some territory. There's going to be some slides, some tangents. Investment section, let's get started. Fantastic. So I'm going to cover some elements of performance, talk about how we invest, talk about what's happening in the markets at the moment, and also take you through some of the investments that you own in your superannuation, which we know members always find really interesting. Firstly, performance. Now, given it's the early part of June, I thought it made most sense to talk to you about financial year to date to the end of May. So I'm going to show you some numbers that are effectively the 11 months to the end of May. They are accurate numbers, but we haven't published them yet, but it's the most recent information I have, so I thought I would go with that. But please also be aware that there's still June to go, so at the end of the financial year, the results won't look exactly like this. But let's see how the year is shaping up. Firstly, the balanced option, and I'm using the accumulation version, not pension tonight, just to illustrate the performance, but the results for pension are very similar. The balanced option in green is the financial year to date number, and you can see that the return so far for the 11 months is 7.1%, and you couldn't make it up. That's identical, as it happens, to the 10-year average in the blue bar, also 7.1%. Let's also have a look at our diversified or pre-mixed options. And if there's anyone in the audience that can't see these charts and figures, feel free to move. You're very welcome to move to a different spot if that's easier for you. The pre-mixed options, or we sometimes call them diversified options on the right, starting with the growth option on the left, then alternatives, growth, sustainable balanced, and then conservative balanced and capital stable on the right. So the growth option is on the left is the one that has the highest allocation to growth-oriented investments or the riskier investments like shares. And over on the far right, all the way to capital stable, those options have got higher allocations to more defensive investments. So, bigger weights to things like fixed income and cash. But in all instances, you can see that the financial year to date results are similar to or even higher than the 10-year average in blue. And that might be quite surprising to some of you. I know when we prepared these slides and these figures, it surprised a lot of people involved. Just given what's happening in the world and the volatility that we have seen recently, people have been surprised that this is actually shaping up to be a decent year. We know that share markets around the world fell in March and April, but they recovered really strongly in May, and share markets are actually quite high at the moment. But a decent year in the works nonetheless. I'm going to turn now to talking about our investment approach, which really is how we invest. There's a few elements here I'm going to draw in, so bear with me, but we do think it's really important that members understand how we invest, so you know what we're trying to achieve, and then you've got that context to interpret the results that you see. Now, it is not very commonly known or understood really that funds do invest quite differently. I think sometimes people think super funds all do the same sort of thing, but funds achieve different results, and it's because they invest differently. And the way we do it, we think, is quite special. So a little more about that now. Okay. So as the slide indicates, our investment approach aims to really do two things. First, deliver strong long-term returns, competitive returns, and that's the thing that really drives, the amount of money that you have from your superannuation in retirement. So strong long-term competitive returns are essential, and that is really key to what we're trying to achieve and what we have achieved through time. The second element is that we want to do that with less risk. So we want to protect your savings and deliver those results in a way that involves taking less investment risk in the portfolios. So we call that the smooth ride, and I know that Jason and Linda have both mentioned that as well. You might see that in some of the materials that we send you, or on the website, you'll see reference to that. That's what it means, is the strong long-term returns, but with less risk. So we have this dual purpose. You might say, well, okay, I get that you're trying to do two things. You've got a dual purpose, but like, why would you want to be doing that? And there's a few points on this slide that just summarise what really that means for you. It means that the journey that you have along the way is important, in that we try and take out some of the bumps and bruises. It's not just about the end point. The journey also matters. We do have a long track record of consistently achieving those two things at once. We've actually been investing that way for about 25 years, so a long history of knowing how to do that well. It is important in times, particularly when markets are weak, when share markets go down, and we know that that is a normal part of investing. There are always points in time when investment markets have a setback. Completely normal. And dealing with that well is really important, because it helps you to be confident in your retirement. And you've heard this word confidence a few times tonight. It is really important. That's what the smooth ride is about. It's important to have that confidence. We all worry about the future, and when we hear about markets going down, it's concerning, and it's really hard to make good long-term decisions when you're worried. So that's what we're trying to achieve. I'm just going to pick up on a point I made about, dealing with downturns well. Some of that is about recovering from losses when there are setbacks. And I just want to illustrate what's important about that. Like, what's so beneficial about minimising a loss and trying to recover back to where you were quickly? So a couple of more investment-y looking slides here. What I'm showing here is two periods of time when share markets fell. So on the left is the time after COVID, so post-COVID, when inflation rose and central banks started putting up interest rates. So share markets went down during that time. And on the far left, you can see we start at the point of 100. So that's, pretending that a member had $100 when the market started to fall. Now, the experience of CareSuper members is depicted in the dark blue line, and you can see that CareSuper members recovered their losses in January 2023, so only a few months after the downturn commenced. The light blue line depicts the experience of the average fund, of a member in the average fund in the industry. What was the average look like? And that was a recovery of lost balance by April 2023. So that's only a few months. That's not much different, but that was a really quick, shallow decline. Markets didn't fall that much, and they recovered really quickly. It makes more of a difference if there's a more prolonged downturn in markets, and the GFC on the right-hand side shows that. So again, in the dark blue, CareSuper members experience recovering losses, getting back to your balance being where it was by January 2011. But a member in the average fund in the industry didn't recover their balance until September 2012. That was a year and a half later of looking at your balance in your account and seeing that it's lower than it used to be. So that makes a very significant difference. The quicker we can get back to growth and compounding, the better off we are in retirement. So I hope that illustrates one of the very practical points of what we're trying to achieve. So that's why we're doing it. How do we do this? How do we invest in a way that produces these outcomes? Well, we have a very sophisticated investment program, and there's a lot going on all throughout the options and the asset classes. But one of the central concepts that's really critical to us achieving these outcomes is that we're active investors. So we're very active across the whole investment platform. Now, what does that mean? What does that allow us to do? Well, it means that we're agile. We like to have a lot of levers in the investment program that we can do different things. We can increase things, reduce things, and respond to the investment outlook. Investment selection is really important. We're deliberately choosing all of the investments across the investment platform. So we're active and we're selecting. We don't invest passively. We take advantage of opportunities when they arise. So if you're active and things change, there are things that you can do to add return and to act in the portfolio to your advantage. But it also helps us to control risk. So if we're trying to reduce risk in the portfolio, you have to have the ability to deselect investments, to not invest in things. Often it's what you don't invest in that is the most important thing to drive the results. So active is important. I mentioned agility and levers, having levers in the portfolio. The more things that we can do to get diversification, the better. Diversification is a really critical part of what we do. It used to be called not putting your eggs all in one basket, but we all just talk about diversification these days. And I'll show you a picture of what that looks like. We have 10 asset classes that are the building blocks of all of the options and the options that you invest in. That's just a picture of the 10. You can see that they have colours. On the website, we colour code the asset classes so that they're easier to look at and they're the same no matter what option you're looking at or what part of the website. 10 is a lot for a super fund. We have a lot of diversity there and a lot of asset classes that do different things at different times that we can move between. I'm going to spend a minute just talking about credit and absolute return, which is shown there on the bottom left. Not very commonly understood asset classes. I'm not going to go into them in an enormous amount of detail today. I'm just going to provide a very high-level comment. If you want more information about any of these asset classes, I would encourage you to go onto the website where you'll find really great, clear explanations. But just at a very high level, and this is really just to illustrate the point of diversification and what we're trying to achieve, let's have a look at credit. And I'm just using the one-year return to March just as an example. So in the blue bar there, the credit asset class returned 9.7%. And I'm just depicting that against return of shares. So global shares did 12. The Australian share market was a little bit less than 3%. So what's credit? So credit are debt securities, but they are a little different to the debt securities you would find in a fixed interest portfolio. They're mainly sort of very low risk government bonds, but credit is usually the debt instruments issued by companies. So it's company debt. We call this a mid-risk asset class. So it's riskier than fixed interest, but nowhere near as risky as shares. So it's part way in between. And we would often allocate to credit instead of shares when the outlook looked particularly attractive for these types of instruments. Absolute return, again, extremely briefly. This is an asset class that includes strategies that aim to deliver a return of cash plus a number. So strategies that might be targeting cash plus 2% or cash plus 3% or even cash plus 1%. This isn't a mid-risk asset class. This is an entirely defensive asset class, completely defensive. And we use it as a substitute for fixed income. If we think the outlook for fixed income isn't that great, we can allocate into absolute return instead. And you can see last year, that was a great result. 8.5% is a fantastic return for an entirely defensive asset class. Much better than being in fixed interest or cash, which are the blue and green bars. So some flavour there for diversification and for what we're trying to achieve in the smooth ride. We don't want to be just reliant on shares all of the time for growth. Shares are the things that are the most volatile. And I would share with you that we normally would have a bit less in normal shares than some other super funds. Now, when shares are doing fantastically well, that makes a difference for us. But we think that the long-term stability of return is more important than having that extra high-risk exposure. So some context there more for the smooth ride. Okay, so that's the end of the section on how we invest. And I'm going to now pivot to talking about what's happening in markets. And there's a lot happening. We could be here for a long time, but I'm sure you don't need a lifetime of my slides. So what is happening? My impression at the moment is that what is said in the media about the changes we're experiencing in the world is quite difficult to interpret. It looks chaotic. It kind of feels chaotic if you're watching the news at night. And there's a lot of talk about uncertainty and commentators saying things about uncertainty and global uncertainty. I'll give you an example. I was watching, and I actually relayed this to someone yesterday, and I said that I was watching the Channel 2 news on the telly, and they said to me, "What's Channel 2?" They stopped being Channel 2 in 1975, but that's okay. I was watching ABC iView on my iPad, if that sounds better, and it was the night that the Reserve Bank of Australia had reduced interest rates in May. And they showed a clip of Michelle Bullock. I don't know, have any of you seen Michelle Bullock, the Reserve Bank Governor, speak? Yeah, she's a fantastic Reserve Bank Governor. But she used the term global uncertainty 3 times, just in the little clip they showed on the news. So, okay. Then the newsreader said it a couple of times, and then the finance guy comes on and says it a couple of times. And it was only 2 nights ago that Alan Kohler was on the news again, and he put up this chart showing how many times the term uncertainty was printed in the Reserve Bank's subsequent media statement. And apparently it was 21, which is double the normal. So I was watching this thinking, how can anyone make sense of this? Like, well, what is this global uncertainty business? Like, it doesn't actually mean anything for you as investors in your superannuation fund. What does that mean? And so I'm going to try and do a bit of translation. So I should say Google Translate, but no, I'm just going to do some plain vanilla translation, I hope, to explain what that's all about. So what do they mean? What they mean are things are changing. And I think it's useful to go back to remember why markets go up and down. So what causes share market volatility or bond market volatility? And what causes it is actually change. And change causes it because the level of markets reflects investors' expectations for the future. So markets anticipate. So a particular company's shares have a value of whatever it is today because the investors in those shares have an expectation for future profits or the future of that company. And when something changes, investors have to change their minds. They have to say, oh, okay, it's not worth that. I thought it was going to be good and it's not, or gee, isn't it going to be better than I thought it was? So it's an expectations game, and that's what causes volatility. So when you see a lot of change in the world, that is why the markets move around in response to that. And what's interesting is, I should actually flip on to my next slide. Sorry, there's a bit of an explanation there about change and what's changing. So this talk of global uncertainty, what actually is changing? What do they mean? It's the things in the middle. Some of those things are the things that are changing. So geopolitical tensions, spending on military, government debt, fiscal spending, technological change. The main one that's been talked about lately and was the cause of the recent volatility, though, is tariffs, the tariffs and changing trade policy. So, what is interesting? Why is it that the tariffs are so critical for the markets and for investors? but some other things in the world that are more dramatic and more terrible, the market doesn't move, the share market doesn't respond. The reason is because tariffs and trade have a direct feed into the things that fundamentally impact the fundamentals that drive share markets. So changing fortunes for companies. And it's that direct translation through to the things that impact profitability of companies that really is the reason why the markets respond so much. So, and those sorts of things are where the green ticks are on the right there. So there are things like the fact that tariffs imposed in a particular country, the practical effect of that is it increases the prices on the shelf in that country. So tariffs cause inflation. It means that companies will choose to trade differently with different partners. They used to sell and buy goods from one place. They don't want to do that anymore. They want to do it somewhere else. And they might want to change production. They might want to move a factory. So it's quite quick to change a price, very slow to move a factory. All of those things will impact the profitability of that company and the outlook for those shares. So that's how the mechanism comes through. And some companies might be better off and some might be worse off. And investors need to process all of that. Now, that's a description of what's happening in the short term. But investors, and certainly us, we're very focused on the long term. So we are in the business of understanding what are the longer term sustained structural implications of change that we see in the world. And I'm just going to show you two examples of the sorts of things that investors are thinking about at the moment. So on the left there, that is the geographic composition of the global share markets. You can see that the US weight in that light green colour, that's 65% at the moment. Now, you don't need to go back very far. It's only 6 or 7 years to about 2018. That was closer to 50%. So the proportion of global shares that are counted by the US market has gone up dramatically because the US has outperformed. So investors are thinking about the future of that. Does that continue? Does it stay the same? Does it reverse? What might be the differing performance of different regions? Or we might be thinking about interest rates and the implications for interest rates. So interest rates drive the returns of almost every asset class in some way or another. What we're showing here are the rates set by central banks. So the US Central Bank and the RBA on the far right. Now, only a couple of months ago, investors expected that the US Central Bank was going to be able to put down rates a lot. But now that's changed. The expectation is they won't be able to because the inflation implications of the tariffs primarily. But it's different for other regions. So in Australia, it's generally considered that the Reserve Bank will now probably be able to put interest rates down a bit more than they otherwise would have been. Okay. Now, another pivot. I'm now going to turn to talking about some specific investments in your portfolio. I'm very happy to answer questions about the outlook and the environment further in the Q&A. But for now, and I'm nearing the end, so bear with me, I'm going to talk about some of the assets of the fund. Now, we have thousands and thousands of separate investments in the fund. And I would like to just emphasise that they're yours. We choose them and we manage them for you, but they belong to you. So you own these assets and the assets of the fund. To begin with, a couple that are local to you. I know it's really interesting for you to see what you invest in that you live in and surrounds you every day. So we do have a couple of examples. There are actually many, but I've just picked a couple. The first to tell you about is Hobart Airport. So you all own 30% of Hobart Airport. It has a net asset value of about $303 million, and the fund invested in Hobart Airport in 2007. You also own a very large chunk of Launceston Airport. I haven't put up a picture of that because I'd just be showing you another plane. I thought one plane was probably enough. So that is a very significant investment of the fund and a very strategic part of our infrastructure asset class. You also own Parliament Square. 100% of it actually is owned by you. It has a gross asset value of $268 million. You all know better than me, it's an office and a hotel. We invested in it in 2022, and it's a landmark Tasmanian investment without a doubt. So you own that, and it sits in the property asset class. So if you're in an option that has property, you have Parliament Square. I hope that that's interesting for you to see. There are more. We'll pick two, otherwise I'd be up here taking up your time forever. I would just really like to emphasise that it is great to see that your superannuation supports your own community, but we do, and you should want us to make sure that we find the best investments for you no matter where they are, and we do that across the whole country and also offshore. So it's critically important that we find the best investments no matter where they happen to be located. So two global ones now. I've showed you quite big ones now. I'm actually going to show you global ones but small ones, but I think they're really interesting. Okay, this investment is called, it's a company, so it sits in our private equity asset class. So if you're in private equity, which most of the diversifieds have an allocation, you have an investment in a company called Dr. Anywhere. We invested in this through an Australian private equity manager, but it's actually a Singaporean company, and it services 6 regional Asian countries. And it's an online medical service, so you can get an online appointment with a GP or a specialist. It's a fantastic business. We went into it in October 23, so quite recent. It's a small investment in private equity, so the allocation of the fund's only about $11 million, but really fantastic, exciting niche investments are part and parcel of what we do as a fund. Not everything has to be big. That is one way we get diversification, have a lot of smaller, really exciting, high-growth things. Another one that fits that description is also in private equity. That's something called the Western Veterinary Partners. Now that is a US company that we invested with through a European private equity manager, believe it or not, and that's a very fast-growing vet services business. So they're not vets, they help vets run their business, and they provide all the business services so that the vets themselves can focus on looking after the furry people. So it is a great business. We also invested in that in 2023. It's small, it's only about $5 million investment, but it's growing very, very fast, and its performance is absolutely outstanding. Some of these investments that we have in private equity, they go up in multiples of value of the original investment, and that's one of them. And I really love talking to people about this business, even though it's small, because it is fantastically high performing, but it's defensive as anything. So vet businesses are quite defensive. The reason for that is the non-cyclicality. So people will prioritise their pet. No matter what else is happening in the world, the pet gets looked after. So it just has no relationship with economic activity whatsoever. And that makes sense to me because, I'm not sure, many of you probably have the highest ranking individual in your household is probably your pet. I know I rank very low below our pet. So I just wanted to share that with you. Now, very lastly, and I'm about to finish, is just to make one last comment about performance. Just looking at longer term performance results here, 10, 15 and 20-year numbers. I mentioned to you before that we're trying to deliver strong long-term returns, and we've got a history of doing that considerably better than the average fund out there in the industry, and we typically rank pretty highly amongst the performers across superannuation. Some images of awards and rankings over on the right, and ratings. We're not here to win awards for you or to just achieve ratings, but it is, I hope, some comfort to you to know that independent agencies in the industry that assess funds like us rate us very highly, and hopefully that gives you some confidence that the independent experts agree that your fund is a really great fund.